HOA Karen kicked my disabled daughter's books across the road. She didn't know I'm a lawyer. Part 1. I've stood in courtrooms with killers and corporations, argued in front of judges who could send lives into chaos with a stroke of a gavel. But I've never felt the kind of cold, restrained fury I did the moment a stranger kicked my disabled daughter's books into the middle of the road like they were trash. My name is Tyler Grant. I'm a civil rights attorney. Harvard-educated, practiced in 3 states, and until this year, mostly known for my work representing veterans and injured workers in public benefit disputes. I'm not the kind of man who raises his voice. I don't have to. But this time, it wasn't my client under attack. It was my daughter. Lena is 11. She has spina bifida and uses a lightweight chair on most days, but sometimes she walks short distances with the help of braces. She's brilliant, introverted, with the kind of dry wit that gets teachers to raise their eyebrows and classmates to quietly respect her. She loves astronomy, puzzles, and hardcover books, the kind with frayed corners and ink that smells like libraries. 3 months ago, we moved into Brookstone Glen, a gated suburban neighborhood just outside of Raleigh. Tree-lined streets, pastel homes, trimmed lawns. It was safe, accessible, close to her new school, and supposedly community-driven. We didn't expect trouble. We paid cash. We asked about HOA rules, the realtor told us. Clearly, Brookstone's HOA disbanded in 2020. There's no active board, you're free to personalize. That wasn't exactly true. It started small. The notes, folded slips of paper left in our mailbox and taped to our door. Please keep mobility equipment out of sight from the sidewalk. We kindly remind you wheelchairs are considered medical devices, not decor. Let's maintain Brookstone's charm together. Lawn signs and disability access ramps disrupt visual harmony. They weren't signed. At first, I thought they were the work of a bored busybody, someone who didn't like change. I didn't want Lena to feel self-conscious, so I removed them before she could see. But then the warnings escalated. On a Friday morning, Lena was waiting at the end of our driveway with her backpack on her lap, thumbing through a book. I was inside finishing a client call. When I stepped outside, I saw her looking stunned, her hands hovering midair, and I saw a woman walking away briskly, back straight, clipboard under one arm. I didn't know her name then, but I saw what she'd done. Lena's books, 4 of them, were scattered across the road, one half in the gutter, another open face down in a puddle of runoff. I ran to her. "What happened?" I asked, kneeling beside her. Her voice shook. She said I was blocking the sidewalk. Then she told me I wasn't supposed to loiter in public with medical gear. My heart stopped. She kicked my bag, said next time she'd call the board. I picked up every book with shaking hands. 2 were ripped, 1 soaked through. My daughter sat in silence, watching me like I might erupt. I didn't. Not yet. I walked her back inside, took a photo of the scene, and told her as calmly as I could, "You're not the one in the wrong." Then I filed a police report. That evening, I reviewed our home security footage. Our camera caught it all clear, close, undeniable. The woman was maybe in her late 50s, wearing a sky blue windbreaker with the words "Brookstone Property Compliance" printed in faded white. She walked up to Lena, said something off camera, then suddenly kicked the books off her lap, snatched the bag and flung it aside. Then she marched away like she'd solved a problem. I froze. The video zoomed in. On her clipboard was a name tag, Karen Billings Brookstone, Oversight and Preservation Authority. Unofficial. My fists clenched. The next morning, I visited the county clerk's office and pulled every registered HOA filing in Brookstone Glen. As I suspected, there was none. The last board dissolved 4 years ago. What Karen was running was entirely fake, but presented to the public like it held legal weight. I wasn't just looking at a nosy neighbor. This was impersonation harassment, arbalized aggression cloaked in fake bureaucracy, and she had no idea who she'd just targeted. I spent the weekend building a case file, photos, letters, video, footage, state code references. I found 2 similar cases in Georgia and Florida where rogue HOAs were successfully sued for disability harassment under the Fair Housing Act and ADA Title II. By Sunday, I had everything I needed to take her down. But I didn't go straight to court, because I knew how people like Karen operate. They don't retreat from force. They unravel under sunlight. On Monday morning, I dropped Lena off at school, then went straight to Karen's house, pastel green flower beds, A little white sign staked in the front yard, Brookstone proud. Respect the rules. I rang the doorbell. Karen answered in the same windbreaker, her expression tightening when she saw me. May I help you? Yes, I said, I believe you kicked my daughter's property into the street on Friday morning. I have you on camera, and I believe you've been impersonating a legal enforcement body. I'm here to offer you a chance to settle this without court. She blinked, then laughed. Oh, you must be that new lawyer guy I am. I wasn't impersonating anything. I'm the acting chair of Brookstone's Preservation Authority. No such body exists. We were formed by neighborhood agreement that doesn't give you the right to harass a disabled child. Her smile vanished. She was blocking a public path. I warned her. You assaulted her. Karen folded her arms. Well, maybe if she didn't flaunt her condition. That's when I raised my voice just slightly. Don't finish that sentence. I left her with a cease and desist letter and a formal notice of my intent to sue under the Americans with Disabilities Act, state hate crime statutes, and for emotional distress. I gave her 72 hours to respond. She slammed the door and I walked away. Because people like Karen don't believe they've lost until everyone else sees it too. Part 2. By Tuesday morning, the cease and desist letter had already made its rounds. Karen didn't respond directly. She didn't have to. Her reaction came in the form of 20 printed flyers taped to stop signs, utility poles and mailbox clusters across Brookstone Glen. I found one while walking the dog, staring at it in disbelief. Brookstone alert. A new resident is attempting to undermine community standards by weaponizing legal threats. His child has repeatedly blocked sidewalks and created a hostile environment. Our Preservation Authority is committed to maintaining safety and dignity for all. Do not engage. Document all incidents. Brookstone Oversight Committee Chair, Karen Billings. She was doubling down, playing the victim, framing Lena, a disabled child, as a threat. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about ego. Karen had built her identity around a lie so thick, so tangled in performative authority, that the truth was now a threat to her very existence. And that made her dangerous. So I didn't escalate with threats. I escalated with documentation. I visited the city registrar and confirmed it. No legal HOA, no active nonprofit entity under the name Brookstone Oversight Committee. Karen's group wasn't registered, funded, or recognized by any public body. Next, I filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's Office, Division of Consumer Protection and Civil Rights. Impersonating a governing authority while issuing fines, warnings, or directives is a violation of both consumer fraud statutes and civil code. Then I pulled property records. Karen owned one home, but she'd filed over 40 compliance letters on behalf of a fake entity to neighbors over the past 14 months, many including threats of fines, threats of enforcement, or escalation to city code. I created a dossier, and I wasn't alone. That same night I posted on the neighborhood forum. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I simply posted the video blurring Lena's face and shared my findings. Karen Billings is not part of any legal HOA. Her oversight committee is an unregistered, unvoted body with no authority to issue warnings or enforce compliance. The attached footage shows her kicking my daughter's school materials into the road and berating her over mobility equipment. Then I attached the PDF false enforcement and HOA impersonation in Brookstone Glen. Legal overview. And I logged off. By morning, the neighborhood had erupted. Not in chaos, but in clarity. Neighbors who'd once stayed quiet started posting their own stories. She told me I couldn't hang a pride flag. She left a warning on my truck for parking too close to the curb. She measured my hedges with a ruler and told me my wife's rose garden was too assertive. I paid $100 for a beautification fine that I thought was real. Camille, a single mom 2 streets down, shared a scanned notice Karen had sent her for excessive Halloween decorations. The letter had Brookstone Enforcement Division stamped across the top in fake gold foil. The community started seeing it. The paper Karen had ruled with was flimsy, and it was starting to tear. But Karen didn't retreat. She launched a counter-offensive. She wrote a formal statement of values and posted it on every porch like it was the Declaration of Independence. Brookstone Glen is a neighborhood built on unity, appearance, and moral integrity. Those who attempt to disrupt that through radical interpretation of rights should reconsider their fit within this community. That word fit, that's when it became clear. This wasn't about Lena's books or our ramp or even our presence. It was about the fact that we didn't fit Karen's idea of normal. We didn't bend, we didn't hide, we didn't apologize. So to her, we were a threat. And I was about to show her what real accountability looked like. That afternoon, I called a meeting, not official, just an open invitation. If you've received a letter warning or threat from the so-called Brookstone Oversight Committee and want to know your rights, meet at Lot 6 Park Thursday at 6:00 p.m. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe 5 people, maybe nobody. But when I showed up, there were 37 chairs, strollers, laptops, a neighbor grilling hot dogs. Even Bob Jenkins, the retired firefighter who'd lived on this block since the 80s, sat with a stack of yellowed letters Karen had sent him over the past year. She fined me $40 for hanging an American flag at an off-center angle, he muttered, said I was violating street symmetry. We all stared. I stood, cleared my throat, and spoke. Karen Billings does not have power. She has paper, and that's all it's ever been. I passed out folders, copies of the legal breakdown complaint templates, and a step-by-step guide for reporting HOA impersonation. I explained the ADA protections. I explained how Lena's rights had been violated and how everyone's had in some way been trampled by a fake crown. People asked questions, shared stories. And by the time the sun dipped behind the trees, we had formed something new. Not an HOA, not a committee, a coalition. We called it Brookstone Real, no hierarchy, no enforcement, just shared truth and accountability. By the end of the week, 15 residents had filed complaints with the state, 4 submitted affidavits. 2 requested Karen return their money, and 1 neighbor, a former software engineer, offered to host a public repository of all the fake citations for transparency. It was the beginning of Karen's unraveling. On Saturday, I walked Lena down the sidewalk, same spot where her books had been kicked. This time, she held them close. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring. I nodded at her. She turned inside and I smiled, because the books were back and the story had just begun. Part 3. They say community is about shared values, but at Brookstone Glen, we were starting to realize it's just as much about shared courage, the moment when enough people say no more and a paper tyrant loses her grip. That Monday, a knock came at my office door just past 10 a.m. A city code enforcement officer stood outside with a clipboard and a grim expression. I'm looking into multiple complaints regarding impersonation of a neighborhood authority, she said. We've received your files and 5 others. Can you confirm the identity of Karen Billings? I led her to the kitchen table where my daughter was eating Cheerios and reading. This is the victim, I said gently. She was targeted, not for what she did, but for what she represents. The officer's jaw tightened. And she did this to a child. She thought she could silence us. She didn't know I was an attorney. But honestly, she didn't care. She just saw someone different and assumed she had the right to correct her. That afternoon, the city sent Karen a certified letter. Immediate cease of all enforcement activity. Failure to comply may result in fines or criminal referral. Karen posted a rant on Nextdoor. The city is siding with radicals. Brookstone is under attack by outsiders who don't respect tradition. It didn't work. Her post got flagged, then deleted. People were seeing through her now, and they were speaking louder. A week later, the state attorney general's office opened a formal investigation, and that's when things escalated. Because in addition to harassment and impersonation, they discovered something far worse: fraud. Karen had collected over $2,000 in fines over the past year from at least 12 residents, some in cash. Others by Venmo under the label Brookstone Maintenance Fee. Not a dime had gone to anything communal. She had pocketed it, and under North Carolina law that crossed from civil to criminal misconduct, the next neighborhood meeting was packed. No hot dogs this time, just raw electrified resolve. Bob Jenkins stood up and held up an old citation for excessive porch lighting. He tore it in half. Then Camille walked to the front, holding Lena's soaked copy of A Wrinkle in Time, laminated now, and passed it around. Some neighbors cried, some stared at the water stains. I'm here, Camille said, because my son has autism. I never spoke up. But when I saw what Karen did to that girl, I couldn't stay silent anymore. People clapped. Some stood, and I stepped forward. I became a lawyer to protect people who don't always have the words or the power or the freedom to fight back, I said. But this isn't just about law, it's about belonging. I let that word settle in. Karen built a false structure, and she wrapped it in rules and language that made people question whether they were good enough. She made people shrink their voices, hide their decorations, apologize for who they are, but she doesn't get to decide who belongs. Lena looked up from her chair in the front row, and I nodded at her. She does. After that night, everything moved fast. The city revoked Karen's neighborhood event permits. The state filed misdemeanor charges, harassment, fraud, impersonation, and the residents of Brookstone Real voted unanimously to file a civil lawsuit for damages and defamation. I drafted the suit, I signed it as both plaintiff and legal representative, and I walked it to the courthouse myself. Karen was served 1 week later in public on her front lawn. Someone filmed it, it went viral. Local news covered the story. Fake HOA leader faces lawsuit after attacking disabled child, collecting fraudulent fines. The reporter interviewed me briefly. I kept it short. You don't get to harass a community, abuse your neighbors and call it preservation. You don't get to hurt a child and call it order. Not in my town, not in my country. Karen tried to rally a few allies. It didn't work. The woman who once patrolled our sidewalks with a tape measure was now alone hiding behind blinds. Her windbreaker balled up in a trash bag on her porch. And Lena. She didn't hide. She rolled proudly down the sidewalk every morning, books in her lap, hair tied with bright blue ribbon, waving at neighbors. She didn't need to win in court. She'd already won in every heart that had once looked away. The preliminary hearing was quiet. Karen sat with her arms crossed, chin high, lips pursed, but she didn't speak. Her attorney entered a plea. The judge scheduled trial for early summer. But we all knew what would happen, because in Brookstone, Glen, the truth had flooded out and there was no going back. Part 4, Karen Billings walked into court like she still believed she ran a neighborhood. She wore a beige blazer, pearl earrings, and clutched a thin folder that looked far too empty for the storm she was about to face. Her posture said pride. Her silence screamed fear. She didn't make eye contact with anyone, not the clerk, not the judge, and certainly not the family seated directly across from her. I sat beside Lena at the plaintiff's table, adjusting the height of her wheelchair footrest as the courtroom settled. My daughter's book sat beside her, one still water-damaged, another with a bright yellow post-it she'd scribbled on, "Tell the truth." Then shut up, I smiled. That was pure Lena. Camille and Bob Jenkins sat in the second row, along with nearly 24 neighbors who had signed on as part of the civil class action. The room wasn't just full of plaintiffs, it was full of witnesses to the damage Karen had done, to the paper kingdom she built and the people she tried to silence. The judge opened with formality, then I rose and began with calm clarity. "Your Honor," I said, "this case is not about property law. It's not even about fraud, though there's plenty of that. It's about power. Specifically fake power, exercised by someone who believed she could intimidate a community into submission without ever having earned the right to govern." I turned to the gallery. She told a disabled child to stop loitering with her medical gear. She issued dozens of illegal notices under a non-existent HOA. She fined residents without any legal authority, and she did it all with the confidence of someone who believed she would never be questioned. I let that hang. And today she, as Karen's lawyer, argued procedural technicalities. He claimed the fake HOA was a volunteer group, that the fines were suggested contributions, and that Karen merely offered neighborhood guidance. Then I played the video, Lena sitting on the curb. Karen approaching Karen's leg, sharp, deliberate, kicking the books across the road. The room went still. The judge stared for several seconds before leaning back and saying, "Continue, Mr. Grant." We presented statements from 10 neighbors. One showed the pink door paint citation Karen left in their mailbox. Another read a parking offense note Karen taped to their windshield. Bob shared a letter threatening decorative violations for flying the U.S. flag at an off angle. Camille's voice cracked when she recalled Karen warning her not to let her autistic son run outside where others could see. She said his rocking made the neighborhood look unstable. Camille said, "I could feel the jury shift, not in anger. In recognition, they'd all seen a Karen like her before." In cross-examination, Karen refused to testify. The judge pressed. Her lawyer answered, She declines to speak under advice of counsel. No apology, no explanation. Not even a glance at Lena. Closing arguments were brief. We don't need to exaggerate damages, I told the jury, because the emotional harm is written in every skipped walk, every removed decoration, every time a child hesitated to be seen. I paused. We're not asking for punishment. We're asking for protection. And for a message that fake power has no place in real communities, the jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman didn't hesitate. We find the defendant, Karen Billings, liable on all counts. Compensatory damages, $180,000. Punitive damages, $75,000. Court costs, full. Karen's face didn't change, but I saw it in her eyes. The crack, the crumble. The quiet realization her paper throne was burning. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like spring. Lena rolled ahead of me on the sidewalk, books stacked neatly in her lap. She stopped by the flower bed out front, picked a dandelion, and held it up. Can I say something to the news people? They're over there. I nodded. But only if you want to. She wheeled over slowly, looked straight into a news camera and said, I just want to go to school and read my books and be left alone. If that's too much for a grown-up to handle, maybe they need help. Not me. That clip aired on every local station that night. The caption, 11-year-old holds fake, HOA leader. Accountable, it was raw, undeniable. And it turned Lena into something Karen never saw coming, a symbol. The following week, Karen's house went on the market. The listing didn't mention the trial, but everyone knew and no one missed her. We got letters from nearby neighborhoods, people asking how to check if their HOA was real, asking how to speak up, asking if we would come talk to their city council. I started a volunteer legal clinic called True Boundaries Free Guidance for anyone being targeted by fake community enforcement or wrongful HOA abuse. We built a database of citations, helped parents of disabled children file formal ADA grievances, and wrote step-by-step guides on how to challenge fraudulent authority. Lena created the logo, an open book with scales balanced on top. Karen's name faded from headlines, but her impact didn't, because she reminded us of something we forgot, that silence isn't the same as peace, and that order enforced through fear isn't order at all. It's oppression wearing khakis. Part 5. The first time we walked down Brookstone Glen after the trial, it felt like something had shifted, not in the pavement, not in the trees, but in the people. They looked up now. They waved, and Lena, she smiled. It wasn't a victory parade. There were no banners or fireworks. Just quiet recognition, neighbors nodding in a way that said, we saw what happened. We're glad you didn't back down. And for the first time since we moved in, I believed we weren't alone. The house Karen once called hers to preserve sold within 6 weeks. The new owners were a couple in their 40s with 3 kids and a rescue mutt named Henry. The first thing they did, paint the front door teal. The second, add a little wooden ramp at the side entrance for visiting grandparents. No one complained. No one measured. The Brookstone oversight signs were gone. The mailbox tape gone. The silence that used to haunt the sidewalks like fog after rain gone. Something brighter had taken its place. We didn't rebuild a homeowners association. We built something else, Brookstone Connect. No board, no fines, just a group chat, a shared tool shed, and a monthly potluck in Lot 6 Park. People showed up with food, lawn chairs, and stories. Camille brought Lena a new hardback of A Wrinkle in Time signed by the author's daughter. After she heard about what happened, Bob Jenkins, who'd once been fined for flying a flag, handed out miniature U.S. flags to every kid on Memorial Day, including Lena. She taped hers to the side of her wheelchair. One evening after dinner, Lena wheeled into my office while I reviewed a case. She held a notebook. Her voice was quiet. Can I show you something always? She opened it and passed me the page. It was a speech. I want to talk to other kids who use wheelchairs or braces, or just feel different. I want to tell them they don't have to get small just to fit in, that if someone tries to make you feel like you're wrong just for existing, it's not your fault, it's theirs. I looked up, is this for school? She shook her head. The city invited me for the Disability Awareness Day next month. My throat caught. They said I could speak if I want to. I reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. You don't have to do anything. You don't want to. I want to, she said. but only if you come with me. A month later, she stood on the steps of the Raleigh Civic Hall, a microphone just below her chin, facing a crowd of 100 people, some seated, some standing, some rolling just like her. And she read her words, clear, steady, unapologetic. I watched from the front row, not as a lawyer, not as a fighter, as a father, and as a citizen of a community that had finally remembered what it meant to stand up together. The video went viral again, but this time it didn't lead to courtrooms. It led to classrooms. Teachers wrote in saying they were using Lena's speech and lesson plans. Parents sent messages. My son stopped hiding his crutches. My daughter asked to join student council. We started a Disability Pride Week. And somewhere in that momentum, a truth landed for me as heavy and undeniable as the day I first saw Lena's books in the street. Karen thought power came from rules, but real power, it comes from people who refuse to be erased. I took on more cases like ours. False HOA abuses, accessibility violations, legal intimidation under the guise of community standards. I created a nonprofit arm for True Boundaries, and we trained 40 volunteers across 3 counties. I met a woman who'd been told her support animal leash violated pet uniformity laws and helped her sue. I helped a black homeowner win damages after a fake committee in another town cited him for cultural lawn elements. Each story different, each fight familiar, and each time I carried Lena's notebook with me. A reminder, a compass. One quiet Saturday while we trimmed hedges and rehung porch lights, Lena rolled up beside me. Dad, yeah, bug. Do you think she still watches us? I didn't have to ask who she meant. I paused, looked down the clean, sunny sidewalk that once held shadows. Maybe I said, but it doesn't matter anymore. She tilted her head. Why? Because this street doesn't belong to her anymore. I looked at her. It belongs to you. We mounted a small plaque at the foot of Lot 6 Park that spring. It wasn't loud, just brushed bronze on stone. Brookstone Glen, reclaimed by Community 2025. In honor of Truth Voice and the kids who refuse to shrink. Lena cried when she saw it, and so did I. Sometimes when I think back to the moment Karen kicked those books, I feel a sharpness in my chest. Not because of her cruelty, but because of how close we came to believing we had to take it. That's how fake power works. It makes people question what they already own. It makes communities forget who they are. But the moment one person stands, really stands, that whole street rises, and nothing paper-built can hold it back. The end.